welcome to another episode of Guess That Game. If you're new here, what we do is we take a picture of an old baseball game off the internet, and using just the clues that we can find in that picture, we try to determine the exact date of the game that is being played, and if possible, even the at-bat, the score, the inning, all of that fun stuff. So let's take a look at the picture that we are going to use for this episode, and here you go. This is quite obviously a Philadelphia Phillies at the New York Mets. You can tell there, Mets are the home team with those awesome pullover jerseys. Also, this is clearly at Old Shea Stadium. So let's go ahead and, by using just what we can see in this picture, and with a lot of help from Baseball Reference, we can determine, I think, when exactly this game was played. So first of all, I said, I think that's Wally Backman sliding into third base. And I'm pretty sure that just because, one, I know what Wally Backman looks like, but let's go ahead and jump over to Wally Backman's Baseball Reference page and just be sure. So here he is. He came up with the Mets in 1980. That 1980 season, he came up and down. He wore two different jerseys, number 28 and number 39. But then starting in 1981 through the rest of his career with the Mets, he wore number 6. Now, if we go back and look at that picture, the number of the Mets sliding into the base there is definitely number 6. So we can go ahead and we can say that that is definitely Wally Backman, and he wore that jersey number between 81 and 88. So we know this game took place sometime around then. So let's go ahead and take a look at the second player in this picture, and that is I'm fairly certain that this is third base. With the way that we can see the scoreboard there, and with looks like somebody in a Phillies uniform up there in the top left, this has definitely got to be third base, right? So when you think of third baseman and you think of the Philadelphia Phillies, who's the first person that comes to mind? I'm going to guess you just said Michael Jackson Schmidt, and I agree with you completely. So let's take a look at Mike Schmidt's Baseball Reference page. Here he is. He spent his entire career, as you probably know, with the Philadelphia Phillies from 1972 through 1989. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to add that to our clues. That doesn't really help us narrow down the date of this game, though, because Wally Backman's time wearing the number 6 with the Mets is encapsulated within Mike Schmidt's entire career with the Phillies. But what I want to do is I want to go up and look at something about Mike Schmidt. Now, Baseball Reference says that Mike Schmidt is listed at 6'2", 195. Now, 6'2" is pretty big. I think he played a little bit heavier than 195 probably most of his career. So that's kind of a bigger guy, right? Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that picture one more time. That does not look like a 6'2" guy jumping up. It's pretty thin and definitely doesn't look like it's a 200-pounder jumping up there. So what we got to say then is, well, maybe that is not Mike Schmidt. And just look at these pictures of Mike Schmidt. He was not a thin guy with his thighs and his legs. So I'm feeling pretty confident saying that is not Mike Schmidt. Well, if you know anything about Phillies history, you know that something happened in 1984 to Mike Schmidt, right? Let's take a look at his Baseball Reference page again. And in 1984, you can see that he started to play some first base. Now, why would the Phillies, you say, 2 seasons removed from back-to-back MVP awards, why would you move Mike Schmidt, a future Hall of Famer, off of the hot corner? Well, that's because the Phillies had a young third baseman coming up through the minor leagues that they envisioned as the third baseman of the future. They wanted to move Schmidt over to first to give his body a rest to hopefully keep him around for a little bit longer. All right, so who was that third baseman, you said? Well, it's one of my favorite players of all time, and it's all because of one baseball card. I just love this baseball card. It's Rick Shue. And just look at that, how dirty he is. He is the consummate baseball player right there. So let's take a look at Rick Shue's Baseball Reference page. So Rick Shue played for the Philadelphia Phillies from 1984 through 1987. So let's add that to our notes. That is actually a big help because that narrows it down to just 4 seasons when this picture could have taken place. Also, not saying that that makes it him, but look at that picture. Look at how dirty he is. His sanitaries are filthy. He's got a dirty knee. He's sweating through his pants. Rick Shue was just the epitome of a dirty, dirty baseball player, and I loved it. I also think that this is a skinnier guy, as I said. So if we look at Rick Shue's page, he weighed in at about 170, and he was only 6 feet tall. Now that jibes a lot more with that picture. That is a lot more what I think of when I think of a 6 foot, 170 pound guy. So I'm going to go ahead and name that as being Rick Shue. All right, so that narrows it down to 4 seasons, 84, 85, and 86, where this game might have happened. Now, before we start looking at some box scores, let's take a look at what else we can glean from this picture. First of all, we can see in the line score up there, it is 6-6. The Phillies have 9 hits, the Mets have 7, and the Mets have committed 2 errors. So what this tells me is this is not early in the game, more than likely. Also, Rick Shue's uniform there tells me this is not in the first inning. Let's also take a look at just everything in this picture. It's all bathed in sunlight. So even if this was a night game, a 7 o'clock start in the middle of summer, come the 3rd inning, you would start to see the lights take effect. You'd see shadows, but no, it is clearly daylight here. So we can deduce a couple of things here. First of all, we know that the score is 6-6. So when we do look at those box scores, anytime that both teams haven't scored at least 6 runs, we know we can rule that out. Next, we know that this is a day game. As I said, it's sunny out there, and we can clearly say that this is a day game. Next thing I want to look at is that scoreboard still. It's got the 4 umpires and their numbers. So who's behind home plate, first base, second base, and third base. Now this harkens back to our last episode where we used the umpire at first base as a big clue. And that umpire was John McSherry. He just happens to be umpire number 10. He also happens to be the home plate umpire of this game. So we've got John McSherry behind home plate. So we can, besides looking up the score and whether or not it was a day game and Wally Backman and Rick Shue were in it, we can also look to see if John McSherry's umpiring crew is working. And if not, we can rule out that series. The final thing I want to look at in this picture is right behind Rick Shue's butt. There is the out-of-town scoreboard, and you can see that Houston is playing at San Francisco. So we can also look, and we can also see what other games are being played as we go through these box scores. And if Houston is at San Francisco, that is another big clue that, hey, we might be on the right track. All right, so let's go back to Baseball Reference. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through Rick Shue's game logs for each of his years. So let's start with 1984. And what we want to look here is games that were played at Shea Stadium. So here we go. He didn't play a whole lot his rookie year, but here are 2 games at Shea Stadium. September 25th. So let's take a look at this. First of all, it says it's a night game. So we know this is not the game. We can also see that the Phillies didn't score 6 runs, so we know for sure it's not this game. And the Giants are hosting the Padres, and the Astros are at LA. So we know that this is definitely not the game. And if we come down here and look at the umpires, we can see there's no John McSherry. So we know that this is not the series, and therefore we can rule out the day game or the game the next day. All right, so let's go ahead and let's move to his second year with the Phillies, 1985. And let's take a look at when they were at Shea Stadium. So here is a series of games in Philadelphia at the Vet, so that is not it. We keep moving down, 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 and here we go, August 12th. Here is a 4-game series at Shea Stadium, so let's take a look here. We can see that neither team scored 6 runs, so we know that this is definitely not the game. If we look up at our out-of-town scores for the day, we do not see either Houston or San Francisco, so that might be a good sign. We don't know. It doesn't really help us a whole lot. Rick Shue's playing third base there. Come down here. Wally Backman playing second base. They're both in the game. We know this is not the game, but let's look at the umpires, and we might have a winner here. Here's John McSherry at third base. Now, we also already said this is a 4-game series, right? So if this is a 4-game series, this is game 1, and John McSherry's at third base. That means by the 4th game, he will be behind home plate. So let's go ahead and look at the 4th game of this series. Let's see, where did it go here? August 12th. So let's go to the final game, August 15th. This is good. 10-7. Both teams scored 6 runs. Looking at the out-of-town scores, Houston at San Francisco. Looking at the line score, we've got, again, both teams scored 6 runs. We've got 2 errors here by the Mets. That jibes with what we saw earlier. Come down here and we look at the box score, and we can see Mike Schmidt was at first base the entire game. Rick Shue was at third base the entire game. So that's really good news. That fits with what we're looking for. Here's Wally Backman at second base. All right. Come down here. We'll double check to make sure that we've got John McSherry behind home plate. And, oh, we forgot to look and see if this was a day game or a night game. We come up here and day game. All right. So far, everything is absolutely perfect to say that this is when this happened. So let's go ahead and let's look at Wally Backman's at-bats. His first one doesn't really matter because we know that it's 6-6. He did walk to lead off the bottom of the first, and then Wimpy, Tom Paciorek, knocked him home with a home run. But we don't care about this. We want to get to the score being 6-6 before we're even really too worried about this. So we come down here, and we go to the top of the 7th. And at the top of the 7th, here we go. Von Hayes reached on an error, and that scored Greg Gross, and that ties the score at 6-6. So now the bottom of the 7th inning, look who's leading off. Wally Backman facing Larry Anderson, and he singles to lead the inning off. All right, next, here comes Tom Paciorek. He singles, and Backman to third base. I think we've cracked this one already. All right, so let's look at this picture and let's walk through this. It's 6-6. That fits. Backman leads off the inning with a single. Then up comes Wimpy. He singles, let's say, to right or to center field. And Backman reading the play, or I don't know, picking up his third base coach. Rounds second hard. He's coming into third. Here comes the throw from the outfield trying to nail Backman at third. And our third baseman, Rick Shue, has to jump up to catch it. Look in the top left-hand corner. I said there's somebody from the Phillies backing up third base. Well, if this was a steal attempt, nobody would be backing up third base in that position. So that could be Larry Anderson there in the top left-hand corner backing up third base in case the ball gets by Rick Shue. And ending up at third base is Wally Backman. So I am very confident here that everything has fallen into place. And I feel safe in saying that this game took place in 1985 in August, and it was the 15th. I even feel more confident in saying that this was the bottom of the 7th inning. Backman would come around to score on the next batter, being Darryl Strawberry, would knock him in on a fielder's choice, and that is pretty much the story of this picture. I feel pretty confident in that. If you have a different answer, or if you beat my time, go ahead and comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, if this is your kind of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Look through the notes below. I am one of the co-hosts of a baseball history podcast called Two Strike Noise, where we love to talk about old baseball. We love 80s and 90s baseball, but we talk about baseball from the beginning all the way through yesterday. So if that's your kind of thing, I'll put links to all of our social media as well as our podcast in the notes as well. And we hope to see you on the next edition of Guess That Game.